It's good to see you all here. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone who have joined us today, and welcome to the February briefing on digital policy. I'm Stephanie Borg-Seiler, for those who don't know me. I'm the Interim Director of DiploFoundation and the Geneva Internet Platform. And as you can see from the video, I am joined by my colleagues. We have Vladimir Radunovic, our cybersecurity expert. Hi, Vlada, thank you for joining us. And also Sorina Teleano, our expert on artificial intelligence. Hi, Sorina, thank you also for joining us. We also have Andriana Gavrilovic. Andriana will take the floor towards the end of this briefing, and she will introduce and be with us while we see what has happened regionally. And we also have Marco Lotti. Marco is the remote moderator, as you can see in the chat. So as usual, for those who are familiar, who join us every month, you know what the usual program for the briefing is, but for those who are joining us for the first time today, a brief outline of what we will cover. So we will start with the main events that happened this month, then we will take a look at the main developments and then the main trends, and then we'll go over the upcoming events in the weeks to come. And at the end, as I just said, we will hear the digital policy updates from various regions. Today we will be referring to two documents, and here perhaps Marco, you can drop the links in the chat. So we will be referring to the predictions which we made in the start of the year, the predictions for digital policy, and we will be referring to them not only during this briefing, but probably as we move along briefing to briefing, so month by month, because we'll be going back to what we predicted in the middle of the year. We'll do the mid-year review of the predictions, and then we see where we are in terms of the development. So the first document that we'll be referring to is the predictions, the digital policy predictions, and the second one is a report that we launched towards the late of January. It's on artificial intelligence and diplomacy. If you were with us last month, my colleague Katarina referred to the report. We'll also be referring to that today because of the many developments and one of the trends, which is about artificial intelligence. So Marco, if you can drop the links there, we can refer to them while we are discussing the developments for February. And I think we can go through the first slide, which is the main events that took place this month, and some of them are still ongoing, in fact. So I'll just highlight a couple. For some of them, we do have reports from these events which are available on the observatory. You can see the link at the bottom, dig.watch/past events, so you can refer to the reports wherever we have them. I'll refer to the 32nd session of the Assembly of the African Union in Addis Ababa. Very important meeting, and during this meeting the head of state and government, they called for the digital transformation of Africa. It is what many are calling the digital moonshot. One can say, based on who was at the event, one can say that the event signaled the growing cooperation between Africa and the EU. But more on this will be discussed during the virtual town hall meeting of the UN High-Level Panel on Digital Cooperation, and that's next Monday, being the first Monday of the month, because the panel was in Addis Ababa, and so they will also refer to this meeting and share updates that took place in Africa. There was also the Safer Internet Day. It's, if I'm not mistaken, the 11th year that Safer Internet Day is running, and this is the annual event. There are usually many activities for children in many countries. I don't know how many of you are aware about Safer Internet Day, and this usually promotes the safer and more responsible use of digital technology especially by children. And on the occasion of the Safer Internet Day, the European Commission launched a new expert group, and UNICEF also had an update it called for coordinated efforts to tackle and prevent violence against children. So as happens every year on this day, a lot of updates related to child online protection and the rights of children in the digital age happen on this day or in the days preceding it or right after it. And we have all of these updates on the observatory. And also in the list of events, we can see the Human Rights Council, which has just started, and this will continue for the next 3 or 4 weeks. So that's the roundup of the events. Shall we go to the next slide? And we can take a look at the main developments in February. So the barometer that you will see in the next 2 or 3 slides give an indication of the prominence of certain issues in comparison with previous months. And I'll just highlight a few of the developments that stood out in particular. Now, the updates that you see listed on the barometer are, as I said, are on the observatory and will also be included in the February newsletter, which we will publish by the end of the week. So if we move across the slides, across the barometer, can we move the barometer, Arvin? All right, perfect. So we can see the German, I'd like to refer to the German update when it comes to Facebook. And there it goes, under digital rights. So the German Federal Cartel Office ordered Facebook to stop combining the data from other Facebook-owned platforms such as WhatsApp and Instagram. I'll pause a minute because I'm seeing someone saying no sound. Fonjam says no sound. Can I just confirm whether you can hear me? All right, thank you. So, Fonjam, hope you get the sound back soon. Thank you for confirming, colleagues. So as I was saying, the German Federal Cartel Office ordered Facebook to stop combining the data from these other networks without the voluntary consent of the users. And the German regulator has given Facebook 1 month to appeal from this decision. Now, the interesting part about this case is that for the first time, we have a decision that establishes an antitrust violation on the basis of a data protection infringement. This case, for those who were following, this case took around 3 years to build, so this investigation was quite long. And if you recall, there was another decision in 2017 which imposed a big fine on Facebook following the WhatsApp merger. But the difference between these two cases is the following. So the 2017 case related to incorrect information provided to the Commission right before the merger. This case now is about the relationship between Facebook and WhatsApp, but it is also about antitrust violation. Where the decision prohibits Facebook from combining the data unless there is the consent of the user. So unless the user voluntarily agrees to do this. And by voluntarily, we mean the use of Facebook, and here I'm quoting, the use of Facebook services must not be subject to the user's consent. So basically, if I don't consent for my data to be collected, my data on Facebook to be linked to data from WhatsApp or Instagram, if I don't consent to that, then Facebook should not prohibit me from using Facebook. So we'll see what happens in the appeal, because we expect, obviously, Facebook to appeal from this decision. Further up, under the e-commerce and internet economy, on the taxation front, again, if you have been following the issue related to the taxing of the large tech companies, especially in Europe. The update this month was that a few countries, that is Lithuania, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Sweden, and Malta, they are opposing the European Commission's proposal to remove the veto powers that member states have over EU tax reforms. So the EU has been trying to pass new tax rules for large tech companies, and we have seen also in the developments mainly last year that some countries in the EU have decided to unilaterally pass tax rules. But in order to do so, in order for the EU to pass the new tax rules, it requires the unanimous agreement of EU countries. And this is because the direct taxation falls within the competence of the member states. So the EU has, let's say, limited room for maneuver there. And so the controversy over the EU tax reforms continues. We have been following this for a long time, and we will continue to do that. Another update, also on this slide, another important one relates to Russia. So the Russian government is considering mechanisms to control its internet traffic in a similar manner to China. So this means that data passing between the Russian citizens and the organizations will stay inside the country instead of being routed internationally through loops. The draft rules also require the telecom operators to install a special equipment provided by the Russian Communications Agency that should help to fight the threats for the internet. Obviously, this is not happening without its fair share of controversy, and we'll have more updates on that as they unfold on the observatory. And if I had to move to the last slide, and I'm referring to this specifically because it's the longest one, it's on new technology. A lot has been happening on especially artificial intelligence, and because it was such a prominent topic this month, we have a trend on that, but Torina will update us on AI in a moment. So we can now move on to the main trends in February. And as usual, we select the three main trends that are very prominent. For the first one, I give the floor to my colleague Vladimir, who will tell us what is happening with regards to the Huawei controversy and why it is relevant for digital policy.
Thank you, Steph. It was interesting to review the other developments from the month. It's always good to get a big picture. And in our predictions, basically in a blog and policy predictions, we said that there will be more and more focus on, as we said, back to hardware in a way. And more focus on hardware, on the hardware production, but also on cables and the telecom infrastructure and so on. This is the continuation of the started controversy on Huawei. And basically, the main issue there, mainly raised by the US, was the security. And what they say is that if you get the Huawei equipment, if you install it, you actually don't know if it has a backdoor, meaning that there might be some bits of code or design in the hardware and software that actually allows the company, and thus the Chinese government as well, to spy, whether on governments or on private sector that installs Huawei. And let's remember that Huawei produces everything from the screws and the hardware devices to software and telephones and so on, so the whole set of equipment. And we know that Huawei has been around the world for years already installing infrastructure. Now, if we look at the technology or the security aspect of that, technology is basically a black box. We don't know what's in. It is a complexity of the hardware and software that this allows us to know more details, and it's also intellectual property. No one wants to tell you what actually is there for the intellectual property purposes. Most vendors are closed, and they don't reveal what's in. And it's not just Huawei. There is no difference between Huawei, Cisco, whatever. There are few, even the software vendors, there are few vendors like Microsoft, for instance, they have some specific programs that allow scrutiny of the code, for instance, to governments that are their main partners. Most of the other vendors actually do not have that, so no one knows what's in. To be honest, to some extent, even the vendors don't know what's in, at least when it comes to vulnerabilities. That's something that's coming and popping up. Particular concern is the 5G network, because as we move towards the Internet of Things and 5G and so on, it's a huge battle of who is going to be the main vendor for the equipment and the infrastructure of the 5G networks, and possibly who might be off control of the traffic, if you wish, or spying within the communications and so on. So that's the technical part. And then there is, of course, huge political aspect. The US is urging the European countries to follow its example and stop using the Huawei hardware. Canada has, from the USA request, arrested the daughter of Huawei founder based on the sanctions break and so on, not on spying. There are any proofs thus far, at least nothing revealed, that there is any backdoor in the Huawei equipment. Australia has banned Huawei already. Japan is working on some policies. New Zealand has blocked some equipment of Huawei within a telecom network within New Zealand. That's one side of the coin. And the other side of the coin is, and that's interesting, the countries that do not follow the example. Interestingly, UK is not the one. UK actually allows Huawei, and it has developed a sort of check through the Huawei equipment together with Huawei within the National Cybersecurity Council, which is within the so-called spy agency, GCHQ. So they basically have been working with Huawei, diving into the code and the design, looking into the possible backdoors and vulnerabilities. And recently, just a couple of days ago, we've heard from a GCHQ guy in Brussels. They haven't found any backdoor. They found a number of vulnerabilities, but that's common for any kind of software. So there is no proofs. And UK is continuing. And then Germany will possibly follow the same case. They are discussing the high-speed internet infrastructure developed by Huawei, and they're considering possibly the same approach as the UK, which is in-depth scrutiny. What might be the real reason? So security is well, under the spotlight. But there is no, as I said, there is no particular difference between Huawei or any other sort of equipment when it comes to black box. Of course, there is some sort of a concerns because of the Chinese law, where the companies are sort of obliged to work closely with the government and provide them access. But we have seen from the Snowden revelations that in the other countries it's not much different. It's just the format how it is done. At the same time, Huawei continues large investments in developing countries. We have seen their work also on the West African cable system. And then there is a question whether an economist, particularly in the last edition, raises this concern, whether it is actually a security issue or it's the economic issue. Huawei is a Chinese champion. It has huge aspirations to become a global vendor. China has the aspirations to be a technology superpower. America as well, the Western countries as well. So it might be actually more of the economic and geopolitical sort of, I wouldn't say warfare, but a fight than narrowly focused on security. What could be possible consequences in a nutshell? Of course, the bad side of it, or the possible bad consequences could be that this sort of economic war might expand, and we could see banning of Cisco or banning of other sort of equipments back and forth. That probably wouldn't be good. What could be a good consequence, and I'm hoping for that, is that vendors might actually become more transparent because of the pressure of the big players or the states where they want to be present. They might actually find ways to open up and be more transparent on what's in the box, showing at least to their main partners, which might produce a trend of more transparency when it comes to hardware and software. Let's hope for that. Steph, that much for now. Back to you.
Thank you, Vlada, for taking us through this issue, which has become highly politicized. As Vlada said, a lot of countries are taking a position now, but some others are still waiting to see what they should do. So from hardware, we move to artificial intelligence. And here I give the floor to Sorina to speak through initiatives.
Thank you, Steph. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. There were again a few major developments in the field of artificial intelligence this month, so we'll go quickly through some of them. There was a mentioning a bit earlier about the report we published earlier this year on AI and diplomacy, and I think Marco shared the link, so we kindly ask you to take a look. We wrote in that report, among many other things, that more and more countries are developing national strategies around artificial intelligence, fueling what some people describe as some sort of race to become the global leader in artificial intelligence. And this competitive perspective, while not reflected in all of the strategies, is actually the main aim of many of them. And the most recent example we have is from the United States, where President Trump just signed an executive order outlining what he called an American AI initiative, which is dedicated to, and I quote, maintaining American leadership in AI. There are several priorities and instructions in these strategies for federal agencies, mostly around driving technological breakthrough in AI, driving the development of standards, and then reducing barriers to testing and deploying artificial intelligence technologies. Of course, training current and future generations with skills to develop and use artificial intelligence. Then also fostering public trust in the use of this kind of technology while protecting civil liberties. And the last point in the strategy is about promoting an international environment that supports AI research and innovation. There are two interesting parts in this strategy. One is that it doesn't really have a dedicated budget, or at least not in the executive order that was signed this month. And the second one is that the order calls for the development of an action plan to protect U.S. advantage in AI technology critical to the economic and national security interests against strategic competitors and adversarial nations. So this is pretty much in line with what we said in the report about the the global race to becoming leaders in artificial intelligence. The implementation of the initiative will be coordinated by a select committee on artificial intelligence, which was created last year within the National Science and Technology Council. Also in the US, we had this month a more specific strategy published by the US Department of Defense. And again, as we said in the report, this is one of those strategies that focus only on specific aspects of AI, and it's pretty obvious this one is related to the military adoption of artificial intelligence. Among the plans outlined here, the Department of Defense intends to launch some initiatives to deploy AI to enhance military decision-making and operations. So it's a sort of use of AI to enhance human capabilities, not really replace them. Also to provide comprehensive AI training across the military. And then, interestingly, there is a line saying that the department commits to developing guiding principles for using AI in a lawful and ethical manner and consulting other stakeholders on this to lawful and ethical use of artificial intelligence within the military. So we will see how that goes and how the consultations actually happen. Outside of the US, there were a few other countries with new initiatives in the field of AI. On the one side, we had India, which plans to launch a new national program on artificial intelligence. This one is said to be including several centers of excellence on AI, an AI hub, and then also a national portal, national AI portal, to allow citizens to access and use artificial intelligence technologies. And also in India, the Ministry of Human Resource Development announced that several higher educational institutions across the country have been setting up or are setting up new centers for artificial intelligence, again, to prepare individuals for using and developing AI technologies. Also, when it comes to capacity development and preparing the workforce, we have an update from the UK, which has just announced that it is going to allocate up to £100 million to support a nationwide program focused on training the next generation of AI experts. The program is actually a government-industry joint initiative. Most of the funds will come from the private sector, but the government has also committed to supporting, for example, the creation of master's and PhD programs across universities around the country and to financially support these kind of programs. And the latest major development this month comes from the Council of Europe, where the Committee of Ministers adopted a declaration on the manipulative capabilities of algorithmic processes, basically drawing the attention of member states to possible threats that automated systems pose to human rights and democratic societies. And I'll just give a short quote because that says a lot about what the declaration is focusing on. So they note that machine learning tools can manipulate and control not only economic choices, but also social and political behaviors. And because of these kind of risks, the declaration and the committee itself calls on member states, Council of Europe member states, to consider the development of additional protective frameworks to address the impact of such technologies on the exercise of human rights. And there are three main characteristics of these strategies, which are strategy declaration, which are worthwhile mentioning. The first one is that it underlines the need for multi-stakeholder dialogue. Within the declaration, there is a point inviting countries to initiate public debates aimed at providing guidance on what is actually the difference between permissible persuasion through algorithmic processes and unacceptable manipulation. Then it also focuses on user empowerment and digital literacy by encouraging member states to promote digital literacy on how much data is generated and used for commercial purposes. And the last point is that this declaration is actually the result of a multi-stakeholder process. It has been drafted in the Committee of Experts on Human Rights, Dimensions of Automated Data Processing and Different Forms of Artificial Intelligence, which again is a multi-stakeholder process. The committee is actually working on a few other issues related to the impact of artificial intelligence on human rights, and we will be seeing some more results of their work in the upcoming period. And that's it from the AI field. Thank you.
Indeed, there are working groups working on that, as we highlighted their work in the predictions document. And from the strategies that our team has looked at, and this is in the work in the lead up to the publication of the AI and diplomacy report, we noticed that on the one hand, there is one of the trends is that, as Sorina was saying, some initiatives are vying for AI leadership. So they make it quite clear that they're after, let's say, the dominance of AI. And on the other hand, we see another set of strategies that are more, let's say, focusing on specific issues. So there are, let's say, they're being developed in parallel. So from AI, we'll move to harmful content. So this is the third trend that we identified this month. And this is because so many developments connected to this trend. So hate speech and violent extremism have been a major concern for governments. And in the past few years and months, the authorities have been applying a lot of pressure on tech companies to monitor and to remove the illegal content within a very short time. So the emphasis here is on the time, on the very short time. And in fact, if you recall the discussions during the 2017 UN General Assembly debate, you will recall that the UK Prime Minister Theresa May, it was a side event, she called on the internet companies to remove extremist content within 1 to 2 hours of the content being posted. Because the reasoning is that during that time, that is when the content spreads the fastest. And so we're looking now at where we are now. So as I was saying, this month we saw another big push. The French minister announced that France will launch a plan of action against hateful content online. So this action plan will require the online platforms to strengthen the current preventive measures for the spread of hate speech. Plus also, it will require them to be more transparent in the decisions that they're taking involving the moderation of the content. President Macron described this law as this action plan as highly necessary. So what does the action plan, what will the action plan include? It will include the education of citizens on online civics. It will also have a clear definition and constant revision of content regulation rules. So we'll see what the definitions will look like. And it will also impose an increased, let's say, responsibility on the online platforms, plus also judicial consequences for the authors of hateful and racist content. And on this specific point, so on the one hand, we're saying that platforms will be required to take stronger preventive measures towards this illegal content, and on the other, the online platforms will be punishable by fines if the comments are not taken down in a timely manner. So that's quite a plan of action from France. Canada has also announced the launch of the National Expert Committee on Countering Radicalization to Violence. Canada already has a national strategy on this, but the committee will help ensure that the priorities of the strategy are met. In India, this month, we also saw that the government is finalizing new rules that will require companies like Facebook and Twitter to implement automated screening tools for content that the government or that the companies themselves, this is unclear, whether such content will be considered hateful or deceptive or of a libelous nature. So that's India, and Pakistan will also do the same. So the Ministry of Information stated that a mechanism is being finalized to control hate speech on social media. And an update also from this week, actually from yesterday, the Secretary General mandated the Special Advisor on Genocide Prevention to bring together a UN team, and here I'm quoting, a UN team to scale up the response to hate speech and to define a system-wide strategy to present a global plan of action on a fast-track basis. So we'll see also what that is about. Now, the whole discussion on countering hate speech, let's say the main issues surrounding this or the main questions are three. The first is, will the government be satisfied, or are the government satisfied with the efforts that the companies have been undertaken so far? And if we look at the latest evaluation sheet by the EU Commission, it's the fourth one. The evaluation sheet states that the efforts of the companies are being regarded as positive. And in fact, the document says that a high percentage, so reaching an average of 89% of the IT companies, they reviewed the majority of the notifications within 24 hours. So it seems that that is possible. But at the same time, all these developments that I've just mentioned, and also the developments that we have seen in previous months, they do suggest that governments are unhappy with the self-regulatory approach. And this is one of the developments that we also predicted for the coming year, that in many areas, including the area of violent extremism and hate speech, there we can expect more and more regulations to come from governments. The second question is, to what extent will the companies be, let's say, allowed to be the gatekeepers of content? I just used the word allowed. It's, let's say, between allowed and obliged to. They are obviously the frontliners, but should they be entrusted, and to what extent should they be entrusted with deciding whether the content is legal or not? And that is a very crucial question, and finding the balance is quite an issue. A third question relates to whether any of these rules could be or are undermining the privacy and freedom of expression protections for the users. It's not the first time that these efforts have been described as censorship. It's also because in the past some of the content has been incorrectly flagged as illegal. So we'll continue to follow these developments on the regulation of harmful content. And that brings me to the end of the trends. And earlier on, I'm looking at the chat again, earlier on there was a very interesting discussion on the Huawei controversy and how it is unfolding in Africa. Vlada, do you have anything to add on that?
Nothing really. It was a useful comment by our friends that in Africa Huawei is very present, and a lot of initiatives are taken by Huawei, and Chinese government is generally investing a lot. But as far as they said, they know there were not many discussions on the role of Huawei among the governments in Africa, and then also Hisham mentioned that it's not really Pan-African concept or approach, it's really state by state, which is also important to note.
Exactly, thanks Vlada for that. And Darwin is just saying that Eastern Europe also lots of investment from Huawei. At this stage, I think I'll ask whether there are any more comments or questions on the developments or the trends we just covered. Marco, did I miss any questions or comments? I think the discussion was, what I saw was only about the Huawei controversy. Did I miss anything? All right, and Marco is confirming. All right, if there are questions and comments, obviously feel free to post them here and we will tackle them. Which means that I'll move now to March to see what we can expect in the coming weeks. As I just mentioned, actually I mentioned at the beginning of this briefing, the Human Rights Council is ongoing and will report from any digital policy related discussions that are going on. And in fact, we know that on Friday, the Special Rapporteurs of Privacy will present a report there. There's also, let's see, the group of governmental experts on lethal and autonomous weapon systems will continue their discussion also at the end of March, and this is a continuation of the discussion that the group had in August 2018, and in March they will once again meet in Geneva. And we also have an anniversary on our list. So the 30th anniversary of the World Wide Web, CERN will celebrate that on the 12th of March. So quite some things happening. Now these are the main events. Other events are listed on the observatory. And if we're missing an event, please do let us know. And I'll move to what is happening from our end, the GIP and Diplo. And this week is quite busy for our team. So on Thursday, there is, and here the colleagues from the EU mission may confirm this, the EU delegation in Geneva is hosting a discussion on artificial intelligence. Let's say, Marco, I don't know if you can share the link here. It's for if you are in Geneva, you can join us. The two speakers will be Andrea Glorioso from the European Commission and Dr. Katarina Hunef from DiploFoundation, who will talk about artificial intelligence and diplomacy report. Also on Thursday, we're having the 4th Geneva Engage Awards, which will recognize the work of permanent missions, international organizations, and NGOs and non-profits based here in Geneva. If we recognize their social media engagement throughout 2018. And this is actually the fourth award, so we're very much looking forward to that. And by the end of the week, we'll also publish the newsletter, the February issue of the Geneva Digital Watch. So stay tuned for that, because as usual, we'll have the analysis, the barometer, the updates from the Geneva event. So we hope you find that informative, and please do share it with other colleagues who are following the digital policy issues. And on that note, unless there are questions and comments, I'll give the floor to Andriana to take us through the regional developments.
Hello everyone, this is Andriana, greetings from Belgrade. Thank you to Steph, Serena, and Vlada for the roundup of the developments. Thank you to the audience for the questions. Thank you to Marco for moderating the discussion. And now we will go into the regional updates for February 2019. First of all, we will have from Middle East and North Africa, Noha Fatih. Noha, please go ahead.
Hello, this is Noha Fatih. I cover internet governance developments in the Middle East and North Africa region. The first update in February is from Saudi Arabia. Abshir, the official app for e-services of the Saudi Ministry of Interior's National Information Center, allows men to track and restrict the movement of women. It sends text messages to men when their wives or daughters use their passports, and then could be used by men to alert airports in Saudi Arabia to prevent a woman in case she is trying to travel without permission or to flee the country. US Senator Ron Wyden sent an open letter to Apple and Google CEOs urging them to immediately remove the app from their stores. Apple promised the company will look into it, and a spokesman for Google said the company has also started investigating the app to see if it complies with Google policies. The other update is regarding the EU proposed artificial intelligence guidelines that could threat the documentation of war crimes evidence in Syria. Since the beginning of the war in Syria, small media outlets have been contributing to the documentation of the war and providing video evidence to the international community regarding the violence against Syrian civilians. However, media outlets had their videos suspended on YouTube. Despite providing context and captions to such videos, they were perceived as inappropriate to YouTube users and having graphic or extremist content. The videos were taken down by artificial intelligence technology that is deployed to clamp down on ISIS and groups alike on social media channels. The situation of these media outlets could be actually aggravated by the EU proposed artificial intelligence guidelines that were criticized for lacking adequate safeguards to fundamental human rights. As Article 19 noted, the guidelines refer to vaguely defined ethics, goodwill, and trustworthy artificial intelligence, which provide broad interpretations and hence could be used to stifle freedom of expression, among other rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Noha, for those updates. And now we are moving to Asia with Amrita. Amrita, please go ahead.
Hi, and welcome to the regional update from Asia for the month of February. The Bangladesh government has filed a lawsuit in the US District Court in South District of New York against Philippine bankers who conspired with North Korean hackers to steal $81 million from Bangladesh's central bank in 2016. The court in this case will have to deal with multiple questions of jurisdiction since it is a multinational cybercrime. In India, the Competition Commission of India initiated a review over Google's market dominance for the past 6 months. This case is similar to the case Google faced in EU in 2018 over its Android platform. In India, again, the government proposes to amend the rules governing the intermediary liability protection and invited comments and counter-comments on the draft Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines Amendment Rules 2018. Some of the proposed changes in the draft include traceability of originator of information, establishing an office or appointment of nodal office in India, deployment of automated tools for proactively identifying and disabling unlawful content. Concerns have been raised that the proposed changes could erode the safe harbor protection for intermediaries, affect the fundamental rights of speech and privacy of individuals, and break encryption. Sri Lanka has recently announced that under the Universal Identity Card scheme, they will introduce electronic identity card and an electronic passport for citizens this year. The Korean Communication Standards Commission has obligated all internet service providers in Korea to filter all server name indication requests, a process that provides access to unencrypted list of websites visited from within South Korea. A draft legislation has been tabled by the Nepal government proposing to impose penalties for improper social media posts. This has raised concerns of freedom of speech and an attempt to stifle dissent. Any posts that are deemed defamatory or against the nation can be punished with up to 5 years in jail and a fine of 1.5 million Nepalese rupees. The government can also instruct social media sites to take down posts, and failure to do so can attract a penalty of 30,000 Nepalese rupees or 3 years jail. The legislation also gives the government power to block social media platforms unless they register in Nepal.
Thank you, Amrita. Now we will hear from Andre Edward, who will tell us about updates in the Caribbean region. Go ahead, Andre.
British Virgin Islands in first use of e-tabulating machines for general elections. British Virgin Islands legislators passed a law, the Elections Amendment Act 2019, in January that will facilitate electronic voting and remove the requirement for ballots to be counted by hand. The hope is that the proclamation of this law and the introduction of these machines which count the ballots that have been submitted by voters will lead to greater efficiencies in the running of a general election. The Supervisor of Elections has made the electronic tabulating machines that will be used for the first time during the upcoming February 25th general elections available for public demonstration to ensure that the voting public is comfortable with the process ahead of the elections. An agreement has been signed on February 19th between the Inter-American Development Bank and the Santo Domingo Cybernetic Park that will see drones being used to supervise public construction projects. Small and medium-sized enterprises are being encouraged to leverage robotics and advances in communication technologies within these infrastructure projects. This program will be simultaneously run in Panama and Bolivia and will see capacity building for staff in data capture and data processing of the data generated by the drone aircraft. Jamaica's Universal Service Fund will be focused on establishing more community access points across the island. The establishment of these community access points will increase the number of free Wi-Fi zones available in the rural areas and is intended to provide greater internet access to Jamaican citizens. Over the years, the fund has established over 300 community access point sites, and these locations provide citizens with low-cost access for research, to process transactions, as well as education and social networking. Jamaican children, seniors, trained to boost online safety. The DiploFoundation prepared to join a number of entities across the world in the observation of Safe Internet Day on February 5th by hosting capacity building workshops on February 1st for over 250 elementary school children and seniors aimed at educating them about safe online practices.
This capacity building is expected to equip these at-risk groups within society in becoming online safety monitors for their peers and in their communities. The foundation has also partnered with UNICEF to increase awareness among adolescents and young adults about the dangers that exist online.
Thank you, Andre. And now we will hear from Foncham Dennis, who will tell us what happened in Africa in the last month. Over to you.
Hi everyone, this is Foncham Dennis with Internet Governance updates for the month of February for the African region. I start in Rwanda, where a smartphone factory will soon go operational. Mrs. Paula Ingabi, Rwandan Minister of ICT and Innovation, announced to the Parliamentary Committee on Education, Technology, Culture and Youth that the country is negotiating with Mara Group, a Pan-African multi-sector company, to operate a smartphone factory by April this year. Mrs. Paula added that the smartphones will be affordable and partnership with telecommunication companies will reduce access cost. The population will be trained so that each home has a smart device with digital literacy to access land services. Secondly, on the 5th of February 2019, Facebook supported more than 20 non-governmental organizations and government agencies in Africa as they sensitize the population on internet safety and security. Facebook supported Safer Internet Day 2019 by sponsoring the printing of online security awareness booklets, facilitating training sessions, and raising awareness on Facebook Safety Center. Mrs. Sherry Zenoreva, Facebook African Public Policies Program Head, said they were glad to contribute in making the internet better. The campaign covered most of sub-Saharan Africa. Largely, Ethiopia's privatization attracts telecom operators in Africa. Following the selection of Ethiopia's telecom as the first of 4 state corporations to be privatized, mobile telecommunication network Orange and Vodacom are among the potential buyers. Mr. Haji Esar, Ministry of Finance Communications Director, said partial privatization will be preferred, with majority stakes owned by the state and shares sold to investors. The privatization is part of reforms headed by Prime Minister Mr. Abiy Ahmed to liberalize the economy and privatize state corporations in order to stimulate economic growth through foreign investments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Foncham. We have reached the end of our local hubs and regional perspectives, so I will give the floor back to Stephanie now for final reflections. Steph, over to you.
Thank you, Andriana, and thank you to our curators for bringing us the perspectives from the various regions. On the observatory, we have a dedicated spaces for these regions. So if you search for, or in the menu on the observatory at each watch, you go over the updates. There's a section of regional updates, and you can see all the regions that we are covering. And that, I think, brings us to the end of our briefing this month. So I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this month, and also our experts, Vlad and Sorina, for being here with us today, plus Andriana and Marco, of course, and Darwin behind the scenes. Thank you for being with us today. A final reminder to download or to access the newsletter, which we will publish at the end of this week, and see you again in March, last Tuesday of the month, which is the 26th, if I'm not mistaken, Tuesday, 26th March. So thanks once again, and see you soon.